What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to What You Scared to Say podcast, episode 33. Right now, I need everybody to like, subscribe, and share. I appreciate you guys coming back. We had a hell of a show last time with Benji, Megan, and Antoine. Today, I have Miss Leah Hoops with us today. You want to say hello to the people?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on to the show. This is a long time coming, Leah. You are from Delaware County, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Listen, you are a grassroots patriot, mega legend. Listen, a lot of people in the party in Pennsylvania know who you are, but it's still more people to reach. It's still more people to inform. And I'm just so grateful that you're coming on this platform to educate people on what's going on. And a lot of people look up to you. They want to hear things that you how you see the board, and things of that nature. So we're going to talk about a lot today. All right. We're going to try to get much as we can get in. And then if not, then we can always come back and do this again because the fight is ongoing. And we said this before the show started, that it is very much a spiritual war as anything else. And so I want to say this, that you, I'm only about maybe now 20 months into the party. And so I met a lot of people, or I heard about people's reputation or people's story before I even met them. You were one of those people. They said, you got to meet this lady named Leah Hoops. She is just fighter. She's fierce. Leah, right? And it was just great. I'm like, all right, because like me, my personality, like I'm a fighter. I gravitate to the fighters. I like people with heart. I like people who speak with conviction. I like people with passion. And that's who I naturally click with. So I couldn't wait to align myself with, somebody of your caliber, right? And so when I came in, it was, well, not when I came in. I want to say like we're farther in now. And so we were doing endorsement process of the past primary. And it was during the endorsement process. It was during, people were announcing whether it was petition signatures going on. So when I came in, we came across a candidate that you know very well named Charlie Alexander. And he was running for a Delaware County Council. And so he was going through a lot. He had personal issues as well, battling cancer. And so, he's fighting for his county, and, you're close friends with him, and you were speaking up on his behalf, and a lot of things was going on. And so I came in the middle of you swinging your sword. Like you was sitting there, warrior princess, making sure this, and putting out the truth, putting out the facts and what's really going on in Delaware County. But you've always, from what I see, for a long time now, you've been this fierce woman. Could you speak to the audience a little bit about, like, was you always like this? Was there something in your life to make you turn this switch on, that you're going to be this fierce woman that is always going to speak the truth, that you always had this type of personality? Or was it a moment in your life that's something that made you become this?
These are great questions. Quite honestly, I think, according to my parents, I came out of the womb like this.
Okay, you came out with a sword in your hand.
I came out with a sword in my hand, armor of God.
Right.
And, I was raised in a Christian conservative home.
Okay.
I came from a blue collar family, and my parents always taught me to, have integrity and to stand for what you believe in, even if you stand alone. And that was one of the greatest things. My whole family is like that. We come from, just tough skin, and eventually the truth comes out, and the truth prevails. And I mean, even when I was growing up, I fought for what was right. I did question authority.
Okay.
I respected authority, but I also questioned it as well. And I just always felt like I was a little different growing up.
Yeah.
And I felt a different kind of energy or spirit. And I've always had a close connection with God, and very strong faith. And that's led me to, I guess, basically where I am now. And, I'm seeing the fruits of my labor, and I'm seeing more and more people are not suppressing their intuition and not suppressing their voice, and they're coming forward and speaking up. And you're one of those people.
Thank you.
So,
all right. So that's interesting, right? You say you always kind of been this type. You knew you was a little different from everybody else. when did you decide that I was going to give back to my community? I was going to get into the Republican Party, especially, and speak, on behalf of conservatives. What was that? Were you aligned more so with the party? Was you aligned more so with the grassroots? Like, when did that start? I'm going to get into politics.
So I've always paid attention to politics,
Okay.
global politics. I read a lot. I read
Okay.
about my enemy. I read about history, and knowledge is power. And honestly, one of the best people I've ever learned from is Thomas Sowell. And I've learned a lot about economics and constitutional rights, and it's just something that I've always loved to learn about because like I said, knowledge is power. And I didn't really I never did politics. I voted, you know what I mean? But I didn't know anything really about politics. And I was very, I don't know, a little naive when I got into the party, and they roped me in and wanted me to become a committee woman. Obviously, I was a huge Trump fan. As soon as he came down that escalator, I knew he was going to change our country. I felt it.
That's amazing.
And they brought me into the party, and they tried to mold me into a politician, and it didn't work.
It didn't work?
Not at all.
What did you see that with the party, whether it was locally with Delaware County or the whole entire Pennsylvania? Was it both? Was there a moment? Was there some information that that woke you up? You're like, I don't think I'm gonna align myself with the party.
I saw that my county was changing drastically. And, back in the day, if you were a Republican, 150 years, Delaware County was Republican. And literally the old school, they pull you in by your ear and be like, you're voting Republican. You go in that voting booth. And then eventually what I saw was the corruption, within the party. And it was changing. It was changing towards Democrat. It was getting very lax and very, socialized. And I didn't like it. And I observe a lot. And I pay attention to people's actions more so than their words. And what I was noticing was within the party, within the GOP, just absolutely despicable behavior. The way they treated each other, the way they talked about each other, the backroom deals, they happen. And, they tried to mold me into this person that I wasn't. And I fought back, and they've hated me ever since. So.
Yeah. Understood. So when you speak of the backroom deals and stuff like that, we hear a lot about the uniparty. And so it's, supposed to be two-party system, but now we have this term we call rhinos, Republicans and name only, and things of that nature. And so you saw some of this going on in Delaware County, especially. So let's talk about, I know from just watching from afar, you've been involved a lot in election integrity, a lot of pro se work. You've been a part of some lawsuits, especially famously, you was co-defendant with President Trump. Do you want to speak about some of those things, especially going on with Delaware County? What was that about?
Sure. So 9 months before the election happened, when we were shut down because of the bioweapon known as COVID-19 was released on our country in order to steal our country, we were investigating Delaware County and the Soros money that was coming in, Zuckerbucks, and I had collected patriots and organized them and started educating myself on election processes. And I had found Greg Stenstrom, whose background is in fraud, and we prepared for November 3rd, 2020. We had everybody in place, people at drop boxes, poll watchers, I mean, you name it. Even the candidates were informed very much of what was going on. And we were witnesses to fraud. And we filed petitions in the local government, and we filed disclosures to law enforcement and under penalty of perjury. And I took that very seriously, and I gave them the report thinking that they were going to jump in, and they didn't. They obstructed. They did not investigate. And in the interim, what ended up happening was I linked up with Project Veritas, which we did not release in the book because that was something that we wanted to keep close to our chest, but we did a sting operation inside of Delaware County with a whistleblower.
I saw the videos.
And yeah, I mean, the videos went viral. Right. And they're being brought up again as, as President Trump talks more and more about the mail-in voting and fraud. But that was our operation. And we filed in the courts thinking that they were going to do something, and, it got shut down. And eventually, we had attorneys, we had to get rid of them because they were corrupt as well. and we started representing ourselves. So once they obstructed, they being the government and law enforcement, and started covering up the fraud, they started coming after us. I've had the FBI at my front door. I've had Pennsylvania Attorney General agents at my front door. I've been nationally defamed. I had to get rid of my position in my business. My son has been harassed. I've had death threats. I've had hate mail. You name it. I mean, they brought everything that they possibly could.
That's scary.
It was, and then it wasn't. Because once you start preparing your mind, thinking that they're going to come to your home, you're going to go to jail, it builds thicker armor. And finally, I just said, I don't care anymore. If you're going to do it, bring it. And we've protected ourselves by being very forward and very open and exposing the corruption. And I'm still surviving.
See, when I started out this episode and I talk about were there moments, because you're this fighter and that's your reputation and you're not scared. And we're going to talk it's different variables and different ways we can, dig into that. But I like that. And so you spoke about fraud that you witnessed. I saw the videos, the sting operations that you did. Like, what specifically of the fraud did you find? Because it's believe it or not, it's people out here who still think that we're making this up. That
sure,
what did you see or what did you come across? What was you?
So within the 5 years, it is so incredibly complex, but I'll try to break it down as best as I can.
Okay.
So what protects the elections is having a voting where it's in the precincts in person, right? If I see, my neighbor John walk in and I go, oh, hey, John, and I can find his name and make sure that that's, his signature is good. He has identification. I know who he is. It's decentralized, right? That's how our election systems were built.
Right.
Once they started bringing in mail-in voting, which, by the way, I think it's 68% of European countries do not have mail-in voting because of fraud.
President Trump just spoke about that.
Right. So, once they started putting into the system, and I'm okay with absentee voting for a good reason. I'm good with military voting.
Absolutely.
But mail-in voting is a completely forensically destructive process. There is no checks and balance. You can't have a poll watcher looking visibly at a mail-in ballot when it's being opened, and you can't even identify the person that sent in the mail-in ballot. I mean, has anyone in America ever had their mail lost? I mean, have you had your checks stolen? I mean, it's absurd that we are sitting here talking about how safe and fair mail-in voting is. It's ridiculous. So what we saw was they had a bunch of mail-in voting come in through a centralized tabulation center. They manipulated the votes with USB cards that came from the machines, and they generated mail-in ballots that were not real. And they did it through, the USB sticks and just came up with their numbers that they needed. That's in a very, very short summary. And then what we found out afterwards is that a lot of the machinery that they're using to, shuffle through and organize the mail-in ballots are also a part of the corruption. Like a Blue Crest sorter, for instance. I'm sure half of you guys have never even heard of a Blue Crest sorter.
No.
Okay. These are large machines that are run out of Blue Crest, which is in Connecticut. It has remote access from Connecticut in Delaware County to our servers.
Wow, I can see a bunch of problems with this.
So,
right.
How does a hacker hack? Remote access is one of the major vulnerabilities. And we have Blue Crest sorters all over the country. So there's one vulnerability.
Right.
They're able to access the servers. They're able to capture all of your information. Why is that okay?
Why would we even allow that?
Why would you even allow that vulnerability? Then you get into the actual machines. Then you get into the tabulation centers. And I'll give you a good story.
Okay.
So Greg Stenstrom, my partner and co-author, who used to do work for the government, he's actually put Sheriff Green of Philadelphia in jail for fraud. I don't know if you knew that, but
no.
He did an investigation in Philadelphia. This was during Obama. And he went into the tabulation center and did a forensic inspection of the tabulation server. he found out that that machine had not been turned on in 10 years. That was 2009 when that transpired. Now, fast forward. Now you have tabulation servers everywhere. You have tabulation centers everywhere. Now you have machinery everywhere. So if they've been doing it since Obama, we obviously know that they're still doing it.
Right.
So, this is what we witnessed. This is what we attested to. This is what we said under penalty of perjury in our disclosures to the government. And, it is what it is. And they've obstructed ever since.
Understood. And I'm so glad you broke it down in detail like that, because people, even in our own party, still wants to give us pushback of why we should find any reason to still use these mail-in ballots. And so when we have information that come out, right, from, I've spoken about this on social media, that our FBI director, Kash Patel, he said he declassified information, passed it on to Congress, that the CCP had a plot to use mail-in ballots to interfere in our elections. You see that we had dead people, like you said, names on mail-in ballots. You had illegal aliens using mail-in. There's so many vectors of fraud. Like, there's so many different ways that you can do this. And so you've been one of going to what you just told us about, the tabulation machines, everything. You broke it down very detailed. What I just said, you was one of the earlier ones that when I met you through social media, you were speaking out against an individual by the name of Scott Pressler. You was brave enough when it's not the popular thing to do, because God forbid we hold our own accountable. And so how was the pushback, or how was the reaction when you were telling people, listen, his whole entire organization is a scam or fraud, the messaging? How was that pushback? Did you get any support from anybody with that?
So it's interesting. I started speaking about him very early on because I had watched and observed and paid attention, and I put data points together. It's actually one of my things that I pride myself in, is that I'm able to put those data points together and remember. I have a photographic memory.
That's amazing.
So I remembered from 2022, Ronna McDaniel, who is one of the worst rhinos there is, right?
Okay.
She started talking about in 2022 that the Republican Party needs to start using mail-in ballots. And then boom. And I said it on social media. I said, give this 48 hours, watch the whole Republican Party flip.
Yeah.
And they did. And that's exactly what happened. And then even Bannon was having people on there talking about, we need to embrace the mail-in ballots. Then you had Jack Posobiec. Then you had Charlie Kirk. And everybody was getting in on the grift. And that's what they did.
Right.
I mean, they used... So what's interesting about Pressler is that he contradicts himself constantly.
Right.
Constantly. He talked about, these mail-in ballots, and if you can't beat them, join them. Let me ask you something, and I'll ask the audience. In what point in history does embracing your enemy and embracing a corrupted, fraudulent system help you keep sovereignty and your country?
Never seen it.
Ever. Right. Not in any war. Not in any conflict will you hear a general say, embrace your enemy. And if you can't beat them, join them. So you have all these people flocking to this guy because he flicks his hair and he talks to you like, oh, everything's so happy. And It's insulting, to be quite honest. And it's sad that there are people out there that will not take a look at what he says and what he does. And instead, they need a savior. They need someone to come in. Oh, Scott Pressler's doing all the work. Scott Pressler. He never gives credit to the people that actually register voters. He is constantly talking about raising money for early vote action. Now he's got a PAC. The guy's making millions of dollars. Millions. And Elon Musk won't even touch him anymore after he invested his money in him. He's a fraud. Right. I've been saying it for a long time. And then what I noticed is I got a lot of pushback. I still get pushback. We need to work together. No, we don't. I don't need to work. I don't need to work with Scott Pressler.
Right.
Scott Pressler does not represent my values as a conservative or an American. What are you conserving is my question. If you say you're a conservative, you are conservative. You are conserving free and fair elections. And you cannot conserve free and fair elections when you are embracing a fraudulent mail-in ballot system. Those two cannot live in harmony.
Right. People think that it's a personal thing. And even when you give what you just said, and we give data on things like this, we tell them that mail-in ballots, because people got so educated on it, it was less Republican voters used it less than 2024 than they did in 2020. We got data to show that we don't have 180,000 Amish in Pennsylvania. So everything has been exaggerated. We have data to show that Bucks County was flipping way before he touched down in Bucks County. So when you present this evidence, it's like a wool still over everybody's eyes that they don't want you to pull over. They like the psyop. They like being lied to. And so because our party, what I've come to learn, because I'm new, I'm still about 18, 19 months in. And so the voters feel that because you're not as crazy as some liberals, that, I'm different. Yes, they're crazy for other reasons, but you guys don't want the truth either. So like it's problems on our side too that need to be addressed with our voters. And I just want to thank you for being one of the ones who was brave enough to speak out on that when it wasn't popular to speak out on. Now you see more people doing it now, but you was I seen the video. It was hilarious that, you was imitating them. And so these are one of the many people you were going to war with. And I'm saying Leah's always swinging her sword.
Yes.
And so let's go back to Delaware County. And I talked about in the introduction how I came across you on social media, right? And then so we talked about it was doing the endorsements, who was running for a school board and things of that nature, because it was during the primary and things like that. And so Delaware County, Frank Agravino is the chairman, right?
That's him.
That's the famous Frank Agravino. And so they wanted to put up a young lady by the name of Tassaline Morales.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's her name.
Yeah.
So information was passed along, and we saw that she had DEI information. She's a former, Democrat. There's nothing wrong with, like, I used to be a Democrat, right? But a lot of people have who've come over to the party, but to actually make the transition to really, all right, understand policy, whether, it might be a conservative lifestyle, really doing the work, really putting the time in and really making the transition a legit one. That takes time. That takes a process. It doesn't happen with a flick of a switch. Right. You just don't jump from one thing to the other. And so nobody knew who this young lady was. We just knew that she has this Democrat background. She has this DEI background that she's been advocating for. And so we were like, whoa, first of all, we're tired of this endorsement process. Let's have our primary, let the grassroots decide, and they're trying to tell us who to vote for. And so because they know, Leah, that you're a fighter, you was fed some information, they know you like to swing your sword, and they know that you're brave and you're going to go at it. And so you was told about this lady, you did your due diligence about her, and you had a conversation with her.
Yes, I did.
And so she got defensive. And so how the party, from what I know, they decided to push back. It was like, how can we fight against Leah? They went to the Philadelphia Inquirer and they said some things about you that obviously is not true. And so I want to give you the moment. I want to give you the platform to address that whole time a few months ago during the primary and the Philadelphia Inquirer, what was said about you, the lies, the vile things that was said. And I want to give you that moment to address that situation and clear things up.
Sure. So I'm an equal opportunist in the sense of I don't trust people like at all until you show me that you are trustworthy. And I treat everyone in that respect. And I've done open source investigations. My information holds up in court. I do it well, and I do my due diligence. And so I was fed some information. I didn't even know about this woman yet. And then I did my research, heavy research, and I kept all the receipts, which I always do. And I put it out there. I put it out there that, her entire platform, she had scrubbed I found that she had scrubbed her Instagram. I had found that she had scrubbed her websites. I found out everything about her, including the fact that her child's father and her fiance murdered, two, one of them they were both actually witnesses that were about to confess and go against, Caesar, her fiance. Or excuse me, it was another person they were supposed to go up against, and her fiance was hired to murder these two witnesses. He's still sitting in a jail cell as we speak. And the bigger thing for me, it wasn't just the DEI and all of that nonsense. It was her testimony on behalf of him, which I read. And I read it very carefully. And it was extremely disturbing. To sit there and say, oh, it was just his first time. What? Just his first time being hired as a hitman? Just his first time, murdering someone, attempting to murder someone else? The mentality didn't sit well. And, it went viral. It did within, Delaware County. And there was a lot of pushback. And, she ended up sending people, her friends. Actually, I found out it was one of her employees who threatened to come to my house and, to hurt me and be violent. And I laughed about it. Right. If you want to come to my home, bring that on, please.
Right.
I exercise my Second Amendment very much so. So, that's the kind of mentality, that is the person that she is. I don't care that she's black. Right. I don't care. So here again, I'll give you a question. Why is it there was so much pushback? First of all, they used her because she was black. And secondly, they used that racial thing to create something in controversy that wasn't there. So why didn't they come after me when I went after Christine Ruther? When I went after Jack Stolzheimer? When I went after Josh Shapiro? When I've gone after all of these other people, okay, these white people and these Democrats or whoever else that I've vetted and have gone after, why is it that the only one that they came after me for was Taslim? So they created a controversy. They went to the Philadelphia Inquirer, which, by the way, is owned. The general counsel is Larry Weilheimer, who is best friends with Josh Shapiro. Larry Weilheimer's wife is Gail Weilheimer, who is a judge in Montgomery County, who got put into a judge position in the federal courts by Biden. So let's talk about, how did they get an in with the Inquirer to then defame me and call me a racist? These are tactics that look to me like the left. Right. They act like Democrats.
Absolutely. I agree. I'm glad that, you had this time to speak on that, because it was a nasty period in Delaware County at the time. And they always talk about this infighting, and it's just manipulation, and it's just, and we're not going for it. It's like, we can still do both. We can go after these crazy Democrats that want to destroy our country and rip up our Constitution, and we can still hold our own accountable and get these pretenders out of the party. Mm-hmm. And so, if we're just talking about other things in Delaware County, right? Taxes, property taxes. Was it 23% that it got raised to? I heard Chester was maybe 13%. I want to give you this time to speak on these property taxes and what they're doing in Delaware County right now.
So let's first start out with the fact that there are two Delaware County council members who are actually affiliated with the Democratic Socialist Party. That's just something to keep in the back of your mind. And if you know anything about socialism and communism, and you understand their blueprint and you're educated in it, all they do is they spend. And then it's an increase of socialism.
It's never enough.
And and then you run out of other people's money. So their budget, first of all, I don't even know that, they don't even know what a budget is, but we are I think we're at $75 million in debt in just the 4 years that they've been there because of the social programs. And I could get into a whole conversation about property taxes and school boards and how they launder money through the schools and everything like that. But what's happening is we had an assessment in Delaware County not too long ago, and they hyperinflated the values of the homes in order to justify a bigger budget, in order to justify raising taxes, in order to, this happens all over the country.
Right.
This is how they do it. So then now you have school boards and you have schools like Upper Darby who then inflate their school budget.
And they can unilaterally just raise property taxes.
Yes, they can. School taxes, property taxes. So who pays at the end of the day for all these social programs? For it's mortgage fraud. It is a cycle of public corruption. That's what it comes down to.
And this don't even have to be right or a left issue. If you're just somebody who pays your taxes, if you earn income, whatever, this affects the left and the right.
Correct.
Why do people continue to vote for this? It's crazy. It's like, here, take more of my money. It's just never enough. Let's continue to what is going on with the people who vote for these things in Delaware County and other places too across the country? What do you think the mindset is that they cannot see that they're being robbed?
First and foremost, I think it's a spiritual thing.
Okay.
I think a lot of people lack God in their life,
right.
Morality, conviction, ethics. And everybody is all about being emotionally charged.
Right.
Our society has been taught to suppress their intuition, to not speak out against evil. And people lack independent thought. And quite honestly, they've lowered the IQ. I think the average IQ in America is under 90.
Wow.
Which is so you have ignorance, you have stupidity, you have illiteracy, you have a multitude of things. That it's very complex, and people are so driven by emotion. And now if you talk about the evil, you're painted in a bad light, and we need to be more tolerant. I hate that word. It is the most evil word in the English language is tolerance.
Right.
I do not have to tolerate you.
Right.
I do not have to tolerate you coming after my child. I do not have to tolerate you mutilating children. I do not have to tolerate, your socialist and your communist. I do not have to tolerate you trying to take my money. I don't have to tolerate that. And I think it's a cultural shift that's happening, where we're getting back to understanding more of our rights, understanding, getting back to God, understanding and getting back to we the people. And I think it's very important that you continue, that I continue encouraging people to speak loudly, to not bend a knee to tyranny, and most importantly, that they don't back down, no matter what.
Right.
No matter what.
I think that's beautiful. And you kind of just segue to the meat and potatoes. Like everything is important that we're speaking about today. But what I was most excited when I said I got Leah coming, like, all right, I'll talk about, I said Josh Shapiro, like, of course, right? So things about, you talked about the budget, you talked about money. And then right now, so we're going through they're discussing the budget right now. And they're talking about, we've had our state senator, Dawn Kiefer. She's been screaming, hold the line at 46 billion. And so what his increase would do, it would take it, you got different estimates out there, but they're saying low is 51 billion. I've seen high as 53 billion. And so Josh Shapiro has said that he wants to legalize cannabis. He wants to pay for these things by taxing games of chance. And so if you look at things with Josh Shapiro, he reneged on school choice. He's also given $5 million to a mosque in Philadelphia. And this is like the largest grant ever given of this stature in this state. And so like he's done things and it's very questionable. But I want you to speak on these things that I just named. But there's another part to this. So like I said, I'm new. And I'm crash coursing and I'm learning. So when I'm look at online, I'm on X, I'm following you, I'm following, Sean. And so when I'm seeing tweets and I'm seeing things, and people can understand when I talk about the budget, they can understand when I'm talking about how he supposedly wants to pay for these things and the funding with SEPTA. I think they can grasp that. what's going to be hard, or if somebody's just coming in, is when Josh Shapiro is being called a criminal. And so I would like to give you this time to educate me, educate the people who will be watching this. It's like, well, how is he a criminal? He might be a shitty politician. He might be a crazy Democrat or whatever, but how is he a criminal? That's two different things.
Sure.
So educate us, please.
So he came up from Montgomery County as a commissioner, and he's tied to many NGOs, so non-governmental organizations, one of them being MCAP, which Sean Connolly has very much been educated on and has educated me on. Right. MCAP is basically where they're dealing with children within the youth services and dealing with family courts and foster care and everything like that, which that in of itself, we already know. I don't know how people don't know that sexual trafficking happens. The courts are incredibly corrupt when it comes to families and breaking up families. But MCAP is being fed a whole bunch of money, which his wife, Josh Shapiro's wife, helps to run. Many of these kids are being pulled out of homes. There have been victims of the Jewish community where they have powerful husbands who have taken their children from them, and Josh Shapiro has been a part of it, and you bring in all these NGOs and you have all this money behind it. That's just a small part of his corruption. The Toll Brothers fraud, you can go to tollbrothersfraud.com and read about the mortgage fraud and the building fraud, and the Security Exchange Commission is involved. But what is near and dear to me is when he was the Pennsylvania Attorney General in 2020, he was on the ballot. He was a Biden elector, which never should have happened because someone in that position is not supposed to actually be an elector, but he was, and they let that slide. But what happened was when we gave over our disclosures to William McSwain, who was the U.S. Eastern District attorney, and we gave over his, the information about the fraud, and he had gone to Bill Barr, and Bill Barr said, no, you're not doing anything about it. Hand it off to Josh Shapiro. And Bill McSwain still sticks to that story to this day, and I believe him because we had submitted those affidavits and disclosures on November the 7th, and on November 17th, I had 2 armed special agents sent to my home, sent to Greg Stenstrom's home, personally sent by Josh Shapiro to intimidate, harass, and obstruct the investigation, while he was simultaneously using public funds to broadcast that the 2020 election was not stolen, that it was free and fair. And magically, 2 days before the election, he knew exactly how much more Joe Biden would win against Trump. To send 2 special agents to my front door. And then when I asked for public records about that interaction, they got nothing.
Wow.
And their names are the special agents, Aida Marcial and the special agent Ben Watson. And I call them out all the time. He's directly connected to a lot of the judges, like Judge Barry Dozer, who just passed away. These all from top to bottom, Josh Shapiro has been involved. I've had attorneys reach out to us that have gotten phone calls from Josh Shapiro, telling them that they were not allowed to represent Greg or I in the courts. I could go on and on and on. But he's directly connected to the University of Pennsylvania. He was on the board of trustees. His father, Stephen Shapiro, is very big in the medical society in Pennsylvania. They were making money hand over foot because that's where all the COVID jabs were generated, was in the University of Pennsylvania. That's where, Joe Biden was a professor for the Annenberg Foundation, which ran factcheck.org. That's where Biden, left his classified documents, was inside of University of Pennsylvania. The amount of evidence that I have against Shapiro, I don't say that, just willy-nilly that he's a criminal. He's a criminal.
Right.
The minute you step on my front porch and personally send 2 agents to my front door as a witness, someone needs to justify that for me. That is criminal activity. That's the stuff of like the mob.
Right.
Showing up at my front door as a United States citizen to intimidate and harass me as a witness. So that in and of itself That is why I call him a criminal. And I'm telling you, as long as I'm breathing, I will make sure that one day that man does the perp walk.
That's deep. That's amazing to hear. And you're brave for that. So what does the process look like? Like, is this some work that you're doing, like far as trying to get him investigated? Like what is the next step to somebody looking in? Because everything that you're saying is to, if anybody wants to do their due diligence, that they can just go research this stuff on their own if they really wanted to look. So what is the next step to that?
If someone wants to take on what I do on a
no,
small
for Josh,
level,
you're saying that you're not going to stop till you see him in cuffs or doing that walk. So what is the next step? Like, how does that come about?
So for instance, in our disclosures and our whistleblower disclosures, he is named multiple times.
Okay.
That is sitting with the DOJ as we speak. It's been sitting with them for a year and a half now.
Paying Bondi?
With the DOJ, with the FBI.
Office.
That is correct.
Got you.
It is sitting there ripe and ready to roll. I mean, I'm ready to testify at any point.
Right.
And it seems to just never want to call me in for testimony. I'm ready to swear under, on my Bible of everything that has happened, everything that I know. And I'm going to continue to just expose and shame him. And hopefully someone has the tenacity and the courage to prosecute Josh Shapiro. I sure know that he's looking to run for president in 2028.
I think the same.
And that is one of this. He is not a moderate, by the way.
Right.
He's actually
he's pretending to be a moderate.
100%.
Right.
He is a fair and just prosecutor, which is run by the Tides Foundation, which is connected to George Soros. He is a huge, huge socialist, and he's dangerous. He's very dangerous. Oh,
absolutely. So what do you have here right here? Is this tied in to, can you please explain?
Sure. So if you I don't know if you can even see, but this is just a small example. I have done multiple public records requests in Delaware County, specifically for billing from the attorneys from Delaware County. And they hired a law firm called Duane Morris. And magically, William McSwain, when he left the U.S. Attorney's Office, guess where he became a partner? Duane Morris. So I asked for the billing, and I had to fight for it for 3 months. It came back to me finally because I won my appeal. I have over 1,200 pages of billing, which I've gone through personally. And I created a legal analysis with the help of some really awesome people, but I've collected data points over a period of time. And what I can show and what has been submitted in a court of law representing myself is I can show you in their own words, with the use of public funds, the development and the premeditation development of a lawsuit against Greg and I in retaliation for exercising our First Amendment rights. It is, when I say they are brazen and put it right in the billing, it's exactly what they did. And I caught them. And I was so far ahead of them that what I ended up doing is I sent an email because I wanted to get ahead of them. And I've sent certified letters to the president judge of Delaware County, to the FBI, to Duane Morris, to the attorneys. So it didn't allow them to have what's called plausible deniability. So it was a sting. It was another sting operation. I made sure that I put in their face their corruption, their criminality, their stealing right in front of them, so that when it goes to court finally and I get discovery, I can then go back to my emails and my certified letter and say, you are implicated in this. I notified you of it, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And on top of that, what it also does is, because these attorneys were involved in the cover-up, in the obstruction, in the crime, and in the corruption, it pierces what's called the attorney-client privilege. So now when I go back and ask for all the records, they cannot be redacted. So that's just a small part of what I do, and I'm very proud of that work, and I would love to teach more people to do what I do, because it's happening all over the country.
Leah, you got some game.
Oh, thank you.
You got some game. So when people are following you online, people like me, And I'm looking, and sometimes like everybody, I opened this up and I briefly spoke about the court case she was involved in with President Trump and the whole election thing.
Yes.
And so people thought, all right, that was the end of, that situation with Leah. So now we see you going back and forth to court. It's like, well, what's going on now? And so this is what you just literally broke down to us, why you're still going back and forth to court, the fights that you're still continuing to fight.
That's right. That's right. We spent 900 days in Philadelphia representing ourselves. And it was interesting because Alina Habba, who's another fraud, tried to take credit for that win for the Savage v. Trump et al. Case. She was never there. Her partner, Michael Medeo, was as useless as they say, as teats on a bull. And they did nothing. And during that time, actually, President Trump's case in Philadelphia was stayed because he was being criminally prosecuted in Georgia. So while his case was stayed, which was connected to us, we still continued on. And we won that case. They offered us settlement. They 100% said to us, we will release you from this case. You just have to leave behind President Trump and Rudy Giuliani. And we said, hell no, we're going to a jury trial. And then right after that, they withdrew their complaint, and we won that case. But in the interim, okay, there was another defamation case against us in Delaware County, which we also won, representing ourselves. That was dismissed. But what was happening with those cases, even though they were filed by the individuals, James Savage and Jim Allen, at the same time, Delaware County was coordinating with those two individuals with public funds to create a retaliatory lawsuit with taxpayer dollars. This is the very definition of what's called a SLAPP suit. It's a strategic litigation against public participation. And Pennsylvania does not really have laws to stop those kinds of things from happening. But this is how they destroy people. If they can't destroy your spirit, if they've taken everything from you, they will lawfare you into oblivion. And this is part of what I'm trying to expose, what I'm trying to stop, to make sure that it never happens to anyone ever again.
That's a monumental fight, Leah. And it's crazy. And so when I look at it, right, as I'm learning, a lot of people they're grouped up. They run in packs in the party. They got organizations, for better or worse. And so from afar looking in, like I've heard your name attached to Greg Stenstrom a lot, but you're not like a pack person. Like you're like every time I look, it's like you got your friends, you got your supporters, you got a lot of people to support you, but you are solo on a lot of your missions and stuff like that. Does it ever weigh on you? Like, do you feel like, are you exhausted from these fights? Are you tired? Is it ever too much for you?
Yes, of course. I don't think of myself as like a lone wolf, but then also like I don't really like have a big wolf pack either. So I mean, I wouldn't be here without the support of patriots, my family, and most importantly, God. So I don't feel like I'm this like lone warrior that's like taking on. Like I would really not be able, and I wouldn't be able to get through the emotional distress. The health issues that I've suffered from. I've been in and out of the hospital multiple times. I've suffered tremendously, and I wouldn't be here without my son,
right.
My boyfriend. So I just want to set that straight. Like I value my relationships, but I also don't feel like having such a big group is necessary to do what I do. You can be extremely effective. I feel like I guess like a special forces, if you will.
Yeah.
Like I roll with like a small crowd that's extremely effective, and I pinpoint and I go to war. Like I dig my trench, and once I have my mind set, I am not moving. Like I will not fall back. I push forward. And if I'm going to have you in my trench, you better be at that level, because if you're not, you are a vulnerability to me and to my family. And I guess it's like a military kind of perspective, but that's how I run my life, and that's how I feel that I've been successful, and in protecting myself and my son, my family, my community.
You are not to be messed with, Miss Hoops. And so like you do have this warrior mentality and things like that. But really, like, so when I was doing a little research about you and I'm looking up, things that you've been involved in, you've done women's self-defense training.
Mhm.
You want to speak about that? Like how
Sure.
who taught you? How did you get involved with teaching women how to defend themselves?
So it's interesting. I've always been a scrapper growing up. I guess it's just like how, I used to fight my cousins. Like I got tortured by my guy, my boy cousins, whatever. That's how it was growing up. And, they made me tough. And, my parents too, they were fighters. And, I was taught like, anybody comes within arm's reach, like you're getting knocked out.
Right.
And, I always felt like I never had a victim mentality. And I didn't want to have that mentality as a woman. And I don't know. I ended up watching Jason Bourne, and I was like, "What is that?" And I found out it was Krav Maga training, and Krav Maga is hand-to-hand combat, and it's taught and was developed in Israel. It's extremely aggressive. You guys can look it up for yourselves. And I got started in that in 2012, and I trained for a long time. I also did other training, Muay Baran, jujitsu, and I just felt like I was going to be a victor and not a victim. And then eventually I became a certified instructor in Krav Maga in 2018. And then I eventually I started training men and women, and then I really honed in on training women to be able to, protect themselves and to be able to survive real world attacks.
Oh, that's amazing. God bless. You spoke earlier about conservative, right? I know I'm bouncing around here, but I got not only that, excuse me, how many minutes left? Copy. All right, so my last question. You spoke a little bit about conservative values and things like that, and I saw a stat or you put up not too long ago, and it was interesting. So to end, what does being a conservative mean to you?
Conserving my rights.
Okay.
From my First Amendment to my Second Amendment to my Fifth Amendment. And if you conserve those rights and conserve the sovereignty of your country, if you conserve your values, if you conserve your convictions, you have to protect them. That is all about conservatism to me. And not breaking away from that, not being pulled in a different direction. To me, it's very structured. And if you stick to conservatism, you will have a very successful and prosperous life. That's what it is to me. It's different things to different people, but for me, conservatism is how I live my life.
I love that. And one of my goals is I've been trying to introduce conservative values, especially to Philadelphia, where we don't grow up with that. We grow up with a lot of liberal values. And so that's why a lot of our people are indoctrinated, especially in these blue cities. And so I appreciate you. I want to thank you for coming on here. This will not be the only time, because I'm pretty sure I have more things I want to talk about with you. You're very engaging and interesting person, and I appreciate the fight. I appreciate you, everything that you do. Everybody else does too. And listen, you got us. You got you got Flip Philly Red behind you.
Yes,
So,
I do. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so thank you, Miss Leah Hoops, guys. And this has been episode 33. Please like, subscribe, share. We'll be back.
Good stuff.